Anthony, you're 60. We need people who can keep up. Malcolm Farley said it, standing in my cubicle doorway, arms crossed, not bothering to sit. 22 years at Bramwell Systems, and he couldn't give me 2 minutes. Keep up with what, Malcolm? I fixed the server crash your new hire caused last month. Fixed it at 2 a.m. while you were at some vendor dinner. He didn't answer, just dropped an envelope on my keyboard and turned to leave. HR has the details. Security will help you pack. Help me pack. Like I was a liability instead of the guy who'd kept this company's servers running through 3 system-wide outages nobody outside engineering ever heard about. I opened the envelope right there at my desk. Termination effective immediately. No severance conversation, no warning, no 30-day notice, just a form letter dressed up in HR language. 2 security guards were already walking toward my row like I might steal a monitor. I want to be clear about something before this goes further. I'm not a bitter old man looking for a reason to feel wronged. I built things at Bramwell that mattered. I trained half the engineering floor. And 3 weeks before Malcolm handed me that envelope, I'd finished the encryption framework that let this company process medical records for 400 hospitals without a single breach in 6 years. That framework is the reason Bramwell Systems is worth anything at all. Here's what Malcolm didn't know when he fired me. I wrote the core of that framework 22 years ago, before I was even a full-time employee, back when I was still freelancing for 3 months on a contract that never once mentioned intellectual property assignment. I built it on my own laptop, on my own weekends, and an old mentor of mine, a guy who'd been burned by a company just like this one, told me to protect it. So I filed a patent, my name, never assigned to Bramwell, never even disclosed. I forgot about it for 2 decades. You forget things like that when you're busy raising a daughter and showing up to work every day for a company you thought had your back. Bramwell was 8 weeks from closing an $85 million acquisition with Calder Dynamics. Malcolm had been walking around the office for months, acting like the deal was already signed, talking about his payout, his next house in Aspen. What he didn't understand was that Calder's due diligence team was about to trace every piece of core technology back to its source, and when they got to the encryption framework, the actual backbone of what they were paying $85 million for, they were going to find a name that wasn't Bramwell Systems. They were going to find mine. I drove home to my apartment in Charlotte with a cardboard box on the passenger seat and a knot in my chest that had nothing to do with anger yet, just numbness. 31 years of marriage to Libby Stone had already ended 2 years before this. My daughter Isabel was in grad school in Boston, and I was going to have to call her tonight and tell her dad lost his job at 60 years old in an industry that doesn't hire men my age back. My phone rang before I even got my coat off. Jackson James, the engineer I trained from his first day out of college, the one who could outcode half the senior staff by his 2nd year. Anthony, what happened? Malcolm just told the floor you were let go for performance issues. That's not true, is it? No, Jackson, it's not. Then what is it? I looked at the filing cabinet in the corner of my living room. Somewhere in there was a folder I hadn't opened in years. I need you to do something for me, Jackson. Don't sign anything new Malcolm puts in front of the team, and don't ask me why yet. He went quiet. You're scaring me a little, Anthony. Good, I said. Means you're paying attention. I hung up, made coffee I didn't need at 9 at night, and pulled that folder out. Patent granted. My name, filed 22 years ago on a rainy Tuesday I barely remembered living through. Malcolm thought he fired a 60-year-old engineer nobody would miss. He was about to find out he fired the one man holding the deed to his entire company. If you want to watch a 60-year-old father with nothing left to lose take back everything they took from him, hit subscribe now, because this story is just getting started.
I didn't sleep that first night. Just sat at my kitchen table with that folder open, reading the same page over and over, like it might say something different the 5th time through. Monday morning, I called Amber Parker. She was an IP attorney I'd worked with almost 15 years back when Bramwell tried to slap the company name on a database optimization technique I'd built. She'd fixed that mess, made sure my name stayed on the paperwork where it belonged. "Anthony Watts?" she said when she picked up. "It's been years. What's going on?" "I got fired Friday. 22 years, gone in an envelope. And I think I'm holding something that matters a lot more than my job." "Tell me everything." I laid it out. The framework, the contractor gap before I went full-time, the patent I filed and forgot about, the $85 million acquisition sitting 8 weeks from closing. She didn't say much while I talked, just the occasional mm-hmm and the sound of her typing. When she finished, she was quiet for a second. "Anthony, do you understand what you're holding?" "I think so." "You're not just holding leverage, you're holding the deal. If Calder Dynamics does real due diligence, and companies spending $85 million always do, they are going to find a hole in Bramwell's ownership chain right at the center of the technology they're buying, and that hole has your name on it. So what do I do?" "Nothing yet. Give me 2 days. I want to review the original contract language before we make a move. And Anthony, don't talk to anyone at Bramwell. Not Malcolm, not HR, not legal. Let them come to you." I drove out to my sister Rachel Barrett's place in Savannah that week. Needed somewhere quiet that wasn't my apartment, wasn't Charlotte, wasn't anywhere Bramwell people might run into me at a grocery store and ask fake sympathetic questions. Rachel made coffee, sat across from me at her back porch table overlooking her garden, and listened to the whole thing without interrupting once. She'd always been the steady one in the family. 22 years, she said finally. "And he fired you over an intercom announcement, basically?" "An envelope," I said. "Didn't even sit down." "You gonna let him get away with it?" "I don't know yet what letting him get away with it even looks like." My phone buzzed on the table. Amber. 2 days early. "Anthony, I read the original contract 3 times. This is better than I thought. You were classified as an independent contractor for the first 3 months, and the contract explicitly states any work product created outside the scope of assigned duties and outside company equipment remains contractor property unless formally transferred in writing. There's no transfer document. None. Bramwell never even asked. So I own it. You own it outright. And Anthony, I pulled the SEC filing language Calder Dynamics submitted for the acquisition. Their offer is contingent on Bramwell delivering clean title to all core intellectual property. If this framework isn't cleanly owned by Bramwell, that's not a minor issue. That's a deal-breaking material misrepresentation. Rachel was watching my face change while I listened. "What do you want to do?" Amber asked. I looked out over my sister's garden, thought about Malcolm standing in my cubicle doorway telling me I couldn't keep up, thought about the 400 hospitals running on code I wrote before I even had a company badge. Send the letter. Let them know exactly what they don't own. You understand what happens next. This isn't quiet anymore. Once that letter lands, Bramwell panics, and panicked companies do reckless things. Send it anyway. 2 days later, my phone rang. Unknown number, Charlotte area code. I almost didn't answer. Something told me to. "Mr. Watts, this is Bramwell's general counsel. We need to talk about a letter my office just received regarding patent ownership." I looked at Rachel across the porch table. She raised an eyebrow, silent, waiting. "Talk to my attorney," I said, and hung up before he could get another word out. My phone buzzed again 30 seconds later. Not the same number this time. It was Malcolm.
I let it ring twice before I picked up, just to make him wait the way he'd made me wait for answers for 22 years. "Anthony." Malcolm's voice had that smooth, rehearsed tone he used on investors. "I heard about the letter your attorney sent. I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding, Malcolm. I own the patent. You don't." "Come on. You wrote that code while you were working for us. Company laptop, company time." I wrote it on my personal laptop, 3 months before I was even full-time. You have the contract. Your own legal team drafted it." Silence on the line. I could hear him breathing, could practically see him pacing his corner office with the view he loved showing off to clients. "This is going to kill the deal, Anthony. 41 people are going to lose their jobs over this. Is that really what you want? To punish everyone because you got let go?" That one almost worked, almost made me feel something close to guilt. Then I remembered he was the same man who told me I couldn't keep up, the same man who let security walk me to my car like a criminal. 41 people are going to lose their jobs because you tried to sell technology you never owned, Malcolm. I just noticed. What do you want? Money? Name a number. We can figure something out, just you and me, before the lawyers make this messy. Talk to my attorney. I hung up. Rachel was staring at me from across the porch table, arms crossed. "He offered you money?" "He did." "You didn't take it." "I don't want his money. I want what's mine, and I want it done right." That evening, I drove back to Charlotte. My apartment felt different walking back in. Smaller, somehow, but also like it belonged to a different version of me than the one who'd left it a week earlier feeling gutted. I texted Jackson. "Don't sign anything new. Tell the team to document everything Malcolm says about the deal. I'll explain when I can." Jackson wrote back within a minute. "People are already talking. Malcolm called an all-hands this afternoon. He said something about a legal complication with legacy code that could affect the acquisition. Everyone's freaking out, Anthony. Is this about you?" I stared at that message for a long time before answering. "I can't say much yet. Just protect yourselves. Keep records. Trust me." "I do trust you, but some people are scared. Skylar in DevOps thinks we're all getting laid off next month." I felt my jaw tighten reading that. Malcolm was already doing exactly what I figured he'd do, turning this into a story about a bitter old employee holding the company hostage instead of the truth, which was that he built his entire empire on a foundation he never actually owned. The next morning, Amber called before I'd even finished my coffee. "Anthony, Calder's legal team reached out directly. They want a meeting. You, me, Bramwell's counsel, and Calder's general counsel." "When?" "Friday, Atlanta. And Anthony, Calder's team specifically asked about your relationship with Bramwell's engineering staff. They asked if you had influence with the technical team." "What does that mean?" "It means Calder might be thinking about a plan that doesn't involve Bramwell at all." I sat with that for a second, coffee going cold in my hand. If Calder Dynamics wanted the technology and the team, and neither of those things technically belonged to Malcolm anymore, then Malcolm Farley was about to find out exactly how replaceable a CEO can be when he's the only piece of the puzzle nobody actually needs. "I'll be there," I said. Friday morning, I drove to Atlanta with Amber in the passenger seat, going over talking points I barely needed because the facts were already on my side. We pulled up to Calder Dynamics building. Glass, steel, the kind of lobby designed to make visitors feel small. 20 minutes early. "You ready for this?" Amber asked as we walked toward the entrance. I thought about Malcolm's voice on the phone, still trying to talk himself out of a hole he'd dug for himself over 20 years of taking credit for other people's work. "I've been ready since he handed me that envelope," I said. We walked through the doors together, and waiting in the lobby, arms crossed, looking like a man who hadn't slept in days, was Malcolm. Malcolm saw me before I saw him. His jaw tightened, that same look he probably gave every engineer he'd ever talked down to. But there was something new in his face now. Fear, maybe. The kind that doesn't announce itself, but sits underneath everything else. "Anthony," he said, not extending a hand. "Didn't expect this to be a whole production." "Wasn't my call, Malcolm. Calder wanted everyone in the room." We rode the elevator up together in silence,
31 floors of nothing but the hum of machinery, and two men who used to nod at each other in hallways, now standing like strangers waiting for a verdict. The conference room on the top floor looked exactly like you'd expect from a company worth billions. Long glass table, chairs that cost more than my first car, floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over downtown Atlanta. At the head of the table sat Calder's general counsel, a woman named Victoria Hill, sharp-eyed, unreadable, flanked by two associates with laptops open and ready. "Mr. Watts, Mr. Farley, thank you both for coming," Victoria said, gesturing to seats on opposite sides of the table. "Let's not waste time. Our due diligence team confirmed what Mr. Watts's attorney outlined in her letter. The encryption framework at the core of Bramwell's medical records platform is patented under Anthony Watts's individual name, not assigned to Bramwell's systems." "This is a technicality," Malcolm said immediately, leaning forward. "The intent was always that work created during his tenure belonged to the company. Every engineer understood that." "Intent doesn't hold up against a signed contract, Mr. Farley," Victoria said flatly. "We reviewed the agreement. It's unambiguous. Mr. Watts retained ownership of any work created outside the scope of assigned duties, on personal equipment prior to his full-time employment date. Bramwell never sought assignment. Not then, not since." Malcolm's face went red. "So you're just going to let him hold this whole acquisition hostage because he's bitter about getting let go?" "I didn't ask to be let go, Malcolm," I said, keeping my voice level, even though something in me wanted to raise it. "You did that, and you did it without checking whether the technology you were about to sell actually belonged to you." Victoria held up her hand before Malcolm could respond. "Mr. Farley, I'll be direct. Your acquisition agreement is contingent on clean title to all core intellectual property. That title does not exist. This gives Calder full grounds to walk away from this deal entirely." The room went quiet. I watched Malcolm's whole posture change, like watching a building lose its foundation in slow motion. "The company is worthless without this deal," he said, quieter now. "The board will destroy me. Investors will sue." "That's not our concern," Victoria said. She turned to me and Amber. "Mr. Watts, Calder is prepared to negotiate a direct licensing agreement with you for the patent, exclusive rights, ongoing royalties, a consulting role overseeing technical integration. Before we discuss terms, I want to know what you're looking for." This was the moment. I thought about Jackson's texts, about Skylar panicking in DevOps, about 41 engineers who built their careers on a platform Malcolm never once thanked them for. "One condition," I said, "employment offers for every engineer currently on Bramwell's technical staff. Full benefits, competitive pay, no exceptions." Malcolm's head snapped toward me. "You're going to gut my company for your own team?" "They're not your team, Malcolm. They never were. You just signed their paychecks." Victoria exchanged a glance with her associate, something unreadable passing between them. "That aligns with contingencies we'd already discussed internally. We'll draft terms." Malcolm stood up so fast his chair nearly tipped. "This isn't over. I'll have my own attorneys review every word of this." "You're welcome to," Victoria said, unmoved. "But Mr. Farley, I'd start looking at your employment contract. Section 7 requires you warrant clean IP ownership as a condition of the sale. If that warranty was false, that's a material breach on your end, not ours." Malcolm looked at me one last time before security appeared at the door to walk him out. The same treatment he'd given me 8 weeks earlier. Except this time, he wasn't just losing a job, he was losing everything he'd built his name on. The door closed behind him, and the room went quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning. Victoria turned back to me and Amber. "Well, let's talk numbers." 6 days of negotiation later, sitting in that same conference room signing the final page of the licensing agreement, my hand actually shook a little. 7-figure upfront payment, ongoing royalties, equity in the combined company, and a signed clause guaranteeing employment offers for all 41 Bramwell engineers at raised salaries. Amber shook my hand afterwards. Anthony, in 20 years of IP law, I've never seen someone walk away from a deal this big and give away this much of it. I didn't give it away, I just made sure it went to the people who actually earned it. My phone buzzed as we walked out of the building. Jackson. Anthony, what's going on? HR just sent something out about Calder offering us all jobs directly. Is this you? Please tell me this is you. I stood on the sidewalk outside Calder's headquarters, Atlanta traffic humming past, and typed back, "Check your inbox tomorrow morning. Everything's about to make sense." I hit send and looked up at the glass building behind me, thinking about Malcolm being escorted out of a room he thought he owned. He was about to find out just how far the fallout would reach.
The news broke before I even got back to Charlotte. Trade sites picked it up first. Bramwell Systems acquisition stalls over patent dispute. Then it spread to local business coverage, then straight into the group chat Jackson had running with the rest of the engineering team. My phone didn't stop buzzing the entire drive home. The first real call came from Jackson, and I could hear the noise of the office behind him, people talking over each other. "Anthony, Calder's HR just emailed the whole department directly. Job offers, 15% raises, full benefits, and it says right in the email that the hiring decision came at your request as part of the licensing agreement. Everyone's losing their minds down here. Good losing their minds. You earned it, Jackson. All of you did." Malcolm's gone. The board fired him this morning, escorted out by security, same as they did you, except this time there's nothing waiting for him on the other side. I didn't feel triumphant hearing that, just tired, in the way you feel after carrying something heavy for a long distance and finally setting it down. Bramwell Systems dissolved within 3 weeks. The board sold off what they could, paid investors pennies on every dollar they'd put in, and most of them went quiet rather than explain publicly how a technology company failed to notice it didn't own its own core product. A few tried threatening lawsuits. None of them had grounds. Due diligence failure isn't fraud when nobody at Bramwell bothered to check the paperwork in the first place. That failure belonged entirely to Malcolm. I heard through Jackson that Malcolm tried starting a consulting firm a month later, heard it folded within weeks. Nobody in the industry wanted their name anywhere near his. My sister Rachel called that weekend, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I told her the whole story sitting on her porch without my voice shaking once. "So it's really over," she said. "The Bramwell part is, Calder brought me on as a technical advisor. Better pay, actual respect, people who ask my opinion instead of talking over me in meetings. And the team? Jackson's leading a new integration project. Skylar's off the panic list. Everybody's landed." She smiled at that, the kind of smile that told me she'd been more worried about me than she'd let on. "You did good, Anthony. I mean that." There was one more call I didn't expect. My ex-wife, Libby, reaching out after the story picked up some local press. Not to check on me, I understood that fast enough. Her attorney had noticed the settlement numbers and wanted to revisit support payments. My attorney handled that in about 10 minutes flat once she found out Libby had remarried months earlier and never mentioned it. Support terminates on remarriage in most cases when there's no agreement stating otherwise. That door closed quickly, and honestly, I didn't feel much of anything when it did. The last conversation that mattered happened 3 days after the deal closed, when Malcolm reached out asking to meet. I almost all the way. We met at a coffee shop outside Charlotte, neutral ground. He looked different, tired, somehow smaller, the confidence gone out of him like air out of a tire. "You know, some people would say you got lucky. One old patent filed on a whim 22 years ago."
It wasn't luck, Malcolm. Someone smarter than both of us told me to protect what I built. You never thought you needed to protect anything because you never built anything yourself. That's the difference. I stood up, left enough cash on the table for both our coffees, and walked out into the afternoon sun without looking back. 3 days later, Jackson texted me a photo. The whole team gathered around a conference table at Calder's office. New badges, new laptops, genuine smiles on people's faces for the first time in weeks. "Couldn't have done this without you," he wrote. I looked at that photo for a long time before I answered. You did the hard part. I just made sure the right people got the credit. 60 years old, and it turned out the best work I ever did wasn't a line of code. It was making sure the people who actually built something got to keep what was theirs.